We have a really topical discussion in the form of another conversation piece asking what role is big tech playing in shaping the metaverse. Please put your hands together for the panelists and your moderator, Alex Kantrowitz, host of the Big Technology podcast, writer of Big Technology, and author of Always Day One. Over to you, Alex.
Okay. What's up, everyone? It's, what is it? It's mid-afternoon. You guys have been sitting there for a while. Why don't you give it up for yourselves? You know, get that blood pumping.
Hello?
So, hey, Michael, what's up?
Yeah.
All right, so everybody's here. We're going to be talking about the role that big tech plays in the metaverse. And joining me for this discussion is Joel Pino, the head of Meta's AI research, now called Fundamental AI Research, no longer Facebook AI Research. That's correct, yeah?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, I love how you're able to keep the F in there. That's awesome.
The acronym is FAIR.
It's fair, yeah. Michael Kagan is the CTO of NVIDIA. Hey, Michael, how are you, man?
I'm great, thank you.
You're back-to-back panels, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we keep the energy up on this one. So, we're talking about big tech's role in the metaverse. This is an AI conference. How many of you spend, some time in the metaverse? Raise your hands. Okay. So we have a handful, right? But this is a crowd that I would imagine is predisposed to wanting to hang out in VR glasses or AR glasses. So I guess my first question to both of you is, what about everybody else? What's holding back, mass participation in the metaverse? Is it the social aspect, or is it the technology aspect that's yet to be built with AI and the hardware that Michael's working on? So, Joel, do you want to kick that one off?
I can get us started. I think there's a few aspects to consider. I think one of them you touched on. It is the hardware. To some degree, we have to think of how do we access this very immersive space that is the metaverse. The VR helmets are probably the most common way that people access it nowadays. They are reasonably available, but it's still not something that everyone has available in their house. The other aspect that I think is interesting is that I do think there's a generational thing that's going to go on with the metaverse, to be honest with you.
So, are we all too old to
Well,
metaverse?
I am not going to judge what is everyone's sort of age in their minds, and that is perfectly fine. But I do see the impact. I have 13-year-olds at home who love being in VR and who do all sorts of things that are very different than the things that I do. I use it more towards work and productivity. In some of our team meetings, the kids are around playing games in a very social and very physically active way, much more so than when they're on a 2D screen. So I think that question of what it takes for each of us, there's always an experience that is the one thing that makes us jump in. It was the same, for those of us who were there around, was it 93, 94, the jump onto the internet. There was something, an experience, a service, a piece of information, a social interaction that got us to jump in there. And the same is going to happen with the metaverse experience. It just depends on having a broader set of these experiences, products, and so on that appeal to each of us.
Yeah, and Michael, would better technology hardware enable us to have those experiences, or where are we being held back on that front?
Yeah. Well, no, the metaverse is actually, we are building the virtual worlds that we live there, communicate there, and we build avatars there. And so it's metaverse, the way I see it, is actually the next generation of internet. It makes internet from two-dimensional internet to three-dimensional internet, and instead of hyperlinking from one 2D page to another, it will be like hyper-jumping from one virtual world to another. And all the things require an enormous amount of computing, much higher amount of computing than the internet today, and it requires also some sort of integration and the platforms. So we at NVIDIA are actually building the what we call Omniverse, which is the foundational platform for metaverse. And as that enables to communicate and collaborate in the three-dimensional worlds by people that are sitting on distance, and that's actually the real-time collaboration. And we use the USD, which is Universal Scene Description, that was developed by Pixar
Right.
originally. And it is actually going to be the HTML of the metaverse.
But Michael,
This,
so just to interject, we asked how many. I'm not sure if you saw it on the screen, but we are asking how many people here are spending time in the metaverse. So are you saying that we're just not there yet in terms of building these experiences? Like where does big tech need to push this experience? Is it just to finish the vision that you're talking about, or is it there already and we need more
well,
adoption?
the 3D internet is actually already there, already here today. It is just it's sort of silos. You have the architects and factory builders are using the digital twins, which is basically the virtual worlds to show the final goods and to build their factories. It is just a matter of making it broader accessible, which is higher adoption rate, which will drive prices down, building the infrastructure to access, because metaverse is it is in the data center, like internet. It requires a data center. You do have
Right.
these edge devices like phone or screen. In the metaverse, there will be probably more devices like VR device or whatever it is. But the data center infrastructure and the data center computing actually needs to move forward, and that's what industry is doing. And we are one of this company that are driving it,
Hmm.
basically building these huge computers at the
Okay.
data center scale.
So we have what do we need? We need better data structure, infrastructure, and these experiences that are going to make people see it the way that they saw the internet. So building off of that, Joel, what is the metaverse experience going to be like? Okay, I write about this stuff all the time. We podcast about it frequently. People, even in this session, there's been some disagreement about what metaverse is. Are there metaverses? Is it a social gathering place that everybody hangs out like they would on their Facebook profile? Is it enterprise? Is it education? Does every time someone wears a VR goggles or a VR helmet, like you called it, does that make them in the metaverse? Where do you see the most potential, and where is this thing going to go?
It's going to be, I'm not going to try to guess where I see the most potential in the sense that there is so much to figure out that it would be really premature to say. To be honest, my answer is all this and more. And again, like the internet provides, for that question, the internet provides actually a very good analogy. Each of us spends our time very differently based on what our interests are. For some people, it's purely social. It's a strong work tool. We spent the last year having all of our meetings on Zoom. All of that changes from one individual to the other, but that's one thing that's important to realize. I talk about what's the one experience that's going to get you on, because usually that's the one piece, right? Like that's the piece that convinces you to try a new technology. But once you're there, after that, it really depends what are your interests. I talk sometimes to people who love to travel. Well, before you book your travel, you're not going to be looking at pictures on the web. You're actually going to be immersing yourself in the places to pick your accommodations, to pick your tours, all of these things. You're going to be going through that in a 3D experience. We talk about education. I have kids who are going through the public school system. The type of information that we used to learn math was, very based in the physical world. What they are using to learn math right now is a lot online based on the last 2 years we've had. In another decade, they will be manipulating information, shapes, and so on in this immersive 3D environment.
Let's talk about that. So when people think about the metaverse and the technology under development, a lot of times they're thinking about the goggles, the helmet, et cetera, the glasses, maybe with AR. What sort of dope technology are we going to develop for the metaverse that's going to make that even cooler? Like, is there going to be things that you could touch, smell, taste?
Yeah.
What is going on in terms of the other, because you need all senses if you're going to be in a different universe?
So,
What's the State of the
if we
Union
lean
there?
on this notion of immersion,
Yeah.
right? Really, immersion is about appealing to all of our senses, and it's also about appealing to our relation with physical space. So one of the things that VR breaks down is this relation to physical space. Right now, you and I are sitting together, and it's lovely to have Michael on the screen. But frankly, having an avatar of Michael that is sitting here, where we get 3D sound when he speaks, where we see the full body motion, would be a very different experience. And so, from the vision and the audio, the challenge is to move from 2D to 3D. And we have certain techniques that, based on AI, who can provide some solutions to that problem. But the really fun stuff comes when we start appealing to the other senses. So the sense of touch. But there we're really in the infancy. We have to build the sensors to capture the data. We have to give also the tactile gloves or others that gives the feedback.
And you're building some of those now.
We are building some of that at Facebook, certainly, Meta now, but a lot of the work was done the earlier days of FAIR, really building the digit sensor, which gives you like the pixels of touch.
Right, smell and taste.
There's some work at Google on an artificial nose that is
That's
quite
crazy.
fun,
Yeah.
and some much more sort of early experimental work on taste. But I think that opening up these questions really gives us some new perspective, not just for the metaverse, but then it also opens up new technology. For example, on touch, we have an interest maybe in this immersive environment, but when you talk about people who are doing remote surgery and need fine sense of touch to be able to operate over a distance and over a network, it opens up really interesting possibilities for remote medicine, for example.
Right. Cool. Michael, how big is the opportunity here? Like, how big, when NVIDIA thinks about its business, is metaverse a small, you have a big business. Is metaverse a small portion, a big portion? And when you plan for the future, is this factor like 10%, 20%? Give us a sense as to where you think it's going to be.
I think it's like, internet to the internet or web 2.0 20 years ago. It is orders of magnitude business opportunity versus the business that was those days. And I think that today we have what we call Internet of Things, and the metaverse will be Internet of Senses. That's what you just was discussed just a few minutes ago. And it's all about the collaboration, and actually all the progress of humanity is through the collaboration. We are able to collaborate with each other much better than any other creature in the earth, and that's why human actually rule the world. And when it's about collaboration, it's about personalization. Now I'm not very good understanding body language, and maybe your body language says something that I don't get. But in the future, we will have the avatars, that reconstructed image of yours, that talking to me in the way that what you actually transmit. So it's like traits, and it will be all based on these large language models, the transformers, that perceive world on one side and express world on the other side, and expresses knowledge that was perceived on the other side. And this expression can be personalized. Think about teacher that talks in the class in the school. Today, basically everyone gets exactly the same message. If you can think about that, everyone will have a personalized message delivered from the teacher, and this expression of what teacher is saying will be personalized to each and every one of the kids. So it's all about how do we work together, how do we collaborate, and how do we communicate.
Yeah. All right. I want to get to questions. I'll throw in some as we go, but this is a crowd that's been sitting here for a while. Why don't we get you all involved? So anyone have any questions, feel free to raise a hand, and we will run a mic to you. We have one in the back here. Why don't we start in the back there, and then we can keep moving.
Hi, thank you so much. I would like to know if there is going to be any difference regarding the data collection from Facebook, now called Meta, with the metaverse, or if it's going to be the same that Facebook regarding all the data collection from, yeah. Thank you.
So the question is Meta going to have, are they going to, let me see if I can interpret this the right way. Are you going to have similar data collection practices when people are in the metaverse as Facebook has when they're in Web 2.0? Because Facebook and Web 2.0, we do a lot less, but it seems like Facebook knows a lot about us. So now if we go to this immersive world that you and Michael are describing, how can people expect their data, to be respected or not in the metaverse?
To be honest, this is an evolving process, right? The way that the data is collected and analyzed today is very different than it was 2 years ago, than it was 5 years ago, and than it was previously. And it changes in many ways. It changes in terms of what data is absorbed. It changes in terms of how we process the data. And it changes into the level of transparency and control that people have to express their preferences about how their data is treated. And so that evolution is going to continue. It has already been happening over the current set of products, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, WhatsApp also. It is going to change in the metaverse also. It's also a conversation that we need to have with civil society. So in many ways, the government instances are coming up with specific points of views of what should be the standards for data. And the companies are responding in terms of, meeting those standards when they're put into place. So I think it's a conversation with, a few agents. I think individuals themselves nowadays have a lot of agency over what data they want to share, what product they want to use, and individuals need to exercise that agency. Companies need to evolve how they are doing this and change their approach. And governments need to put in place sort of points of views of what is the expectation that we have of on these questions. And so that conversation is going to evolve, and I expect those standards to evolve over time.
Okay, great. We'll take another question. Just a preface on the question front. No speeches, please, and keep it on topic. But we got another 3 minutes or so we'll take another question. Right here in the middle. We can let's see if we get quick answers, and we can do 1, 2. Actually, why don't you both ask your questions, and then we'll have our panelists. So you first, and then we'll pass the mic to you over here. Go ahead.
Thanks. So this conversation is about the role of big companies in shaping the metaverse. And some of the answers that I heard were about the technology, shaping a rich experience. But something that I'm lacking, and I want to know why, is the responsibility of the metaverse. How are the big companies going to think about avoiding addiction, harassment, or all the problems that are going to come that have already been happening in other places like the social networks? So why is this something that has been avoided, or why is it not something that the companies are taking a step on?
Okay, let's just answer this one, and then we can see if we have time.
And I don't know if Michael wants to jump in, or if you want me to give at least a point of view on that one.
Yeah, well, I can just say it's some very general. Of course, it's no, we are not making the social networks. So in video we are a little bit distant. But what we do is in the sort of maybe adjacent area is that we've developed technology to develop sort of digital fingerprints of behavior, and this technology may help to identify bad behavior or to create the right behavior and help to protect and to basically help ourselves not to get into the troubles with the bad things that can happen on the internet.
Let me add a little bit, just because I think, I do, my company certainly does a lot more user-facing products. I think that conversation is absent. We maybe haven't tackled it in the short time we have today, but that conversation isn't absent at all. There really is a strategy to build up many of the metaverse devices with a privacy-first perspective in mind, and we have very, thorough system in terms of privacy reviews that are put in place for the metaverse. I would say also a lot of the AI that we've been building in the last 5 years or so is very different and has been evolving on these questions. When we talk about, for example, questions of fairness with respect to our products, how do we make sure that the algorithms that we're deploying are not discriminating against one group versus another, in particular with respect to some protected characteristics? This is something that we didn't know how to do necessarily a few years ago, that we know how to do much better today. That is going into the into the technology that we're developing. The other place where we are doing a lot of work is in terms of how do we use AI to of course, recommend content that is adapted to people's interests, but also prevent, certain contents from being disseminated in terms of harmful content. So we're talking about harassment, we're talking about hateful speech, and so on. And so there's a lot of development of that technology that's being built in as well. The one topic, though, that I think is particularly relevant to bring in this kind of a forum is that often between some of them, when we do this sort of responsible innovation is one of the terms that we use. When you do responsible innovation, there's often tension between some of the values. We want to have strong privacy guarantees, but we also want to have very strong properties in terms of safety, in terms of removing harmful content. We want to have a lot of ability of expression. We've certainly seen it recently with respect to some of the terrible geopolitical situations in Ukraine, recently in Iran. And so how to pull between these notions of privacy, fairness, availability to disseminate information to people who need it, that tension between these different properties of responsibility is actually very difficult, very contextual, requires a sort of a nuanced analysis of the situation. And so for that piece of the conversation, what we really need is to have a conversation beyond just, companies taking their responsibility, but with governments and civil society and individuals, and make sure that we have a very active dialogue as the situation evolves.
Okay, I would love to take more questions, but I'm sorry. Unfortunately, we do need to go because we're over time. But I just want to thank you guys. You've been an amazing crowd. Let's hear it for our speakers, and thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. Thank you again. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, panelists. Riveting topic and the responsibility of big tech in the construct of metaverses as we move forward. To our